We're holding on page Yud, Ois Hey, and we are concluding the topic that we spoke about last time concerning the concept of the levels. He's constantly going through what the Alter Rebbe goes in the order. Is it that the Isha, that the Makabel, that Knesset Yisrael triggers Hashem's Hamshacha from above to be able to make a level of Ish, the Yeledus Zachar, or does it mean that the actual level of Klal Yisrael itself brings about the level of Zachar? And those are the two approaches of the Alter Rebbe in the Maimer, the approach of the philosophers, and the final approach of the Alter Rebbe, the conclusion of the Alter Rebbe. And we explained that there is the level of Yidden, the way they are, the way there's Tata and Elah, there's the bottom and above, where there, this Rustul Asata, in that level, this Rustul Asata only reaches to the level that it's in the Shorish HaNevroim, and following that, once we have done all that we can reach with our Avodah, we have done this Rustul Asata. Then that was followed by the quid pro quo, by this Rustul Elah that comes based on the Shorish of the Nevroim, connected to the root of where we're coming from. So then following that, there's a level that's completely beyond the divisions of above and below, Hashem's essence, where over there the limitations fall off, and we, as our connection with Hashem's very essence, is able to evoke and draw down that higher level, that level that is from Hashem's essence, even though it is beyond our reach, because we're dealing with a level that there is no top and bottom, there is no distinctions. We're dealing with a level that's higher than Chafetz Chesed, which we said earlier. The level of Chafetz Chesed, Hashem desires kindness. That's where an Isrus Dula Eila comes on its own. That's where Hashem's inspiration from above comes on its own. Then there's a level of the Machshava Atzmis, the essential thought of the Eibishter, which is the level that B'min Nimlach Mishusem Tzadikim, that Hu Hashem he consulted Neshamas Yisrael, meaning he saw that we will fulfill Torah mitzvahs and we will accomplish the Dir B'Tachtoinim, and that is why he created the world. That is the source for the level of Chafetz Chesed. So once we've established that, the Rebbe is going to wrap this up and connect this again. This final thing actually is about the Lasata La'ela. There is no distinctions when we reach that level. So he's going to connect it back to what the Alter Rebbe says in the Maimer, the two approaches, whether it is that the husband, the Isha triggers the Ish, and therefore the Ish is the one that causes, according to the philosophers, the one that causes the male child to be born, or is it coming from the Isha herself, or is it Knesset Yisrael itself that causes that, or that is not just trigger, but that's where it comes from, the Yeledus Zach. Hey, line 17. I say that according to this, we can explain the order that he speaks about, the Shnei Pirushim B'ish Mazras Tchila Yeledus Zach. That Alter Rebbe's order, look at the Torah we spoke about a few times earlier, is that when he explains how is it that when a woman gives a seed first, she gives birth to a male child, initially, meaning initially, the first period of the Maimer reflects the initially of our Avodah. The nation is Gala Pnimis Avodah Yisrael. Before it becomes revealed the inner level of the service of a Yid, that the inner level of the service of the Yid reaches Hashem's essential thought, and that is the whole purpose of creation, etc. So before we reach that level, when we're at the beginning stages of our Avodah the Knesset Yisrael, V'amshacham Al-Mailim Shnei Dvarim, the Avodah of a Yid, and the resulting Hamshacha that comes from above, are two distinct things. Like we said before, there is Tata and La'ela. There is what we do down here, and there's the quid pro quo. There is the la'ela that comes from above. The melam hamshacha sheba al yadam, the hamshacha that comes down through our avodah, since we haven't tapped into that inner connection beyond above and below. So therefore, what results, comes out of our avodah, when we have the Sat in such a case, it's from a light that is associated and connected with the world. Like we spoke about earlier, it's only from the source of the world. That's where our inspiration from below can reach. We can only reach to the source of Nivroim. We cannot reach higher than that. That's too high for us to be able to reach. Line 24. And the advantage and the quality and the goodness of the avoid of the Yidden at that time, as we said, the advantage of that is that the light is something that's internalized and from the internal level of light, because as opposed to if there's only Isrusadol Eila, if it's only inspiration from above, which is really like the first level of Isrusadol Eila, before you even come to the Avodah below, that has no limitations where it comes from, but it's not internalized. Only when we do the Avodah, as we said at the beginning of the mind, that it's coming from within us, so then the Isrusadol Eila that follows is something that's internalized. So that is all fits in with Pirush Harishon, with the first explanation that Alter Rebbe brings in the Maimer from the philosophers. That the seed of the woman is a trigger, is a cause for the husband's seed to come down and therefore create a male child, because it is an ascendant, it is what's more powerful. Once you have that first level, that initial connection, the Isrustal Sata and Isrustal Eila that have a connection with each other, the woman only triggering the man, not being the source of it. But then afterwards, through this Mizgala Pnimius Da'avodas Yisrael, becomes revealed the inner part of the service of the Yidden. And the inner part of the service of the Yidden is that we reach in such a level that transcends bottom and top. The power of Hashem's essence in it. Why is there the power of Hashem's essence in that follow-up avodah? Because Yidden and Hashem are entirely one. And like we spoke about earlier, that even the level that is beyond Olamus, that Hashem gives us as a matana from above, since Hashem desired what we spoke about yesterday, He wanted to have a dir b'tachtonim, and the dir b'tachtonim must be done through our avodah. So therefore, even these amshachas that are higher than Seder Ishtalshlus must also be done through our avodah. It's not just that the avodah is a cause and a trigger, but it is actually the source of where the amshacha comes from. That is a Pirush Hasheni. That is the second explanation in the Maimon of the Alter Rebbe. The conclusion of the explanation of the Maimon of the Alter Rebbe, where he goes not according to the explanation of philosophers, that the birth of the male comes from the seed of the woman. And the advantage of that hamshach above, which is the birth of the male child. It's not just that we gain the level of the inner light, the level of the light that permeates us, but it's still a light that only has to do with world. But rather, in the second explanation of the Alter Rebbe, what do we tap into is Amshachas ha'or shel ha'mayla ma'olam, top of page Yud Aleph. We're drawing down the light that's beyond the connection with the world. V'ad l'amshachas ha'atzmus, until we draw down from Hashem's very essence. In other words, what the Rebbe is saying, essentially, and it's not just in this piece, but in this piece it's even more emphasized, that the seeming dispute of the two views that the Alter Rebbe brings down, the views of the philosophers, if it's coming, the male child is coming from the husband, but it's just that the woman has to be beforehand, and then the husband follows, and that's why you have the male child. Or the concluding view of the Alter Rebbe, the maskan of the Alter Rebbe, that he says not like the philosophers, is another approach, completely different, that it comes totally from the woman, meaning it's coming totally from Knesset Yisrael. The way the Rebbe explains it is that these two explanations are not contradictory, but Elu ve'elu divrei Elokim Chaim, because they're both brought down in Torah, even though originally they come from the philosophers. But since the Alter Rebbe brings it down as Maimer, so now these become part of Torah. Since they become part of Torah, therefore, each one expresses another part of our avodah. There is the initial avodah. Our initial avodah reflects the view of the philosophers that the woman only triggers the hamshacha from above, is a cause for the hamshacha from above, and therefore it's only that our Srustal Asata awakens the Srustal Eila that's connected with the worlds. And then afterwards, there's the level that the Alter Rebbe explains, which is much deeper, that we tap in. Once we have done that, once we have that initial level, as it is expressed in the philosopher's type of way of talking about the biology of it, so then we reach a higher level where we reach the machshava atzmis, we reach the connection with Hashem's very essence, and over there, it's the woman itself, it's Knesset Yisrael itself, that engenders and brings down this hamshach. Any questions?
I mean, okay. Just a or a question, Raibard.
Yes.
I don't know, from what I understood is we are able to reach that level even before we do it, meaning just by Hashem imagining, like we said before, what we will do in the future, you're triggering that aspect. Yeah, we have to do it later, but isn't that how Hashem created the world? Meaning he saw what tzaddikim were going to do, and that aroused in him something.
Correct.
So even before we did it.
So that's part of the plan. You're right. But until we actually fulfill the plan, and I believe I mentioned this yesterday, there has to be first, to actualize this, there needs to be the Ma'aseh Poel. First, there is the theory, there's what Hashem saw in his mind, that we will accomplish this and we will make a dir lo yisbarach b'tachtonim. And then when we actually do so then we bring down into this world that machshava atzmi. Because prior to our doing of our avodah, so then we don't bring down that machshava atzmi, that sensual thought of Hashem, that level that is beyond Seder Shtalshlos, even higher than the Chavetz Chesed, even higher than the source of Yisur Stala on its own. But once we actually manifest it in this world, that b'min nimlach n'shesem tzadikim, the dir b'tachtonim that Hashem planned for, is now being manifested in this world. So then, in us can come down that revelation of that machshava atzmis. It's not just something theoretical that remains up there.
So the fact that we are Kudsha Brichu in Am Yisrael Chad doesn't absolve us from the duty to do the work.
Not only that, the work is what enables that to become revealed in us. If we don't do the work, so then it's only in the spiritual realms. It's in that level of min imlach. It's not down here. We want that connection should be manifest to us down here while we're in the Neshama Beguf. So to do so, it must follow on the heels of our accomplishing and revealing that min imlach in this world. That Hashem saw that we would do Torah mitzvahs. So when we do that, so we reveal it.
So Kudsha Brichu in Am Yisrael Chad Batchala is just the neshamot. After accomplishing the work here, the guf also will be Chad.
Correct. Or at least through the neshama it becomes Chad. I mean, there's deeper ideas in other Mamarim that speaks about the guf special connection. I'm not going to get into that, but that this Chad should be revealed as the neshama is in a guf. That's when we accomplish what we're supposed to accomplish with our guf. Otherwise, that's not revealed. Okay, let us continue further. Ois Vav, top of page Yud Aleph. Yes, we can connect this with the second day of Nisan. Very interesting why the Rebbe is connecting it with Rish Chodesh. This is a mimer that the Rebbe said on Rish Chodesh Nisan. But still in all, the Rebbe a lot of times leads into, well, we're going from here to the following day and so on. They connect it with the second day of Nisan, the Lefi HaDeya. According to the view, according to the opinion, that in Nisan the world was created. There's a machlokes in Rabbi Shua and Rabbi Lezer Rabbi Lezer holds that the Tishrei Nivra Olam, and Rabbi Shua holds B'Nissen Nivra Olam. What's it mean that the world was created? It doesn't mean the world itself, but actually, the first day of creation was on the 25th, either the 25th of Elul, according to the opinion of Rabbi Lezer, that the world was created in Tishrei, or on the 25th of Adar, according to the opinion that the world was created in Nisan. What does it mean then the world was created in Nisan? It was created in either Adar or El, because as we know, the main part of creation upon which the entire world revolves around is Adar. The creation of man was on the first day of Nisan. And the creation of the world was on the 25th of Adar. The actual creation, the first day of creation, was on the 25th of Adar, according to the opinion of Rabbi Shua. Therefore, so how do we get into the second day of Nisan? Comes out like this. Yom HaShabbos Harishon Hoya B'Shmeini B'Nisan. So it comes out that the first Shabbos of creation was Beis Nisan, was the second day of Nisan. If the day of the creation of Adam Rishon was Rosh Chodesh Nisan, that was Friday. So Shabbos was the second day of Nisan. According to what's known, B'Tivul days was Manabriam in fitting together the two opinions in the time of creation. As we know, since Elu Dibra Lakim Chaim, these and those are the words of a living God, and there cannot be a machloikis in Metzias, there cannot be a machloikis about a down-to-earth thing. So therefore, what does it mean, and how do we reconcile the two views that one says that the world was created on Rosh Chodesh Nisan, now one says that the world was created on Tishrei? So he says, Shabriya v'poyol, that the explanation for this is that the Bria, in actuality, the physical creation as we know it, Haisa b'Tishrei or Chafei b'El, it was in Tishrei, or really beginning at the 25th of El, like we said before. That began 5 days earlier. And the thought to create the world, Haisa b'Nisan Chafei Adar. That was on Nisan, the 25th of Adar. Now, as we know, when we talk about the creation of the world in Chassidus, we're not only talking about the creation of this physical world, but we're also talking about the creation and the bringing into being of all the different levels and revelations and spiritual realms and worlds that preceded and were necessary for the creation of this world. It's all part of the creation process. So, for example, when we talk about in davening that atu ad shalei nivra ha'olam, atu la'achar nivra ha'olam, you are the same before the world was created, you are the same after the world was created. So when we talk about before the world was created, so Chassidus always talks about, it doesn't just mean before the physical world, but it even means before Atzilus and before the Tzimtzum Arishan and so on, because all of these levels are part of the creation process. So in a similar vein, the Rebbe is going to explain that the distinction over here I'm going to make, that Nisan is a time of Hashem's thought about the creation of the world, and Tishrei is a time of the creation of the world in actuality. The creation of the world in actuality includes all the levels that have to do with the world, and the thought is that level that precedes it where Yidden came from. Let's see it inside. Line 10. We could say the actual creation that took place in Tishrei is included in it also that revelation that Hashem desires kindness, that already has to do to a certain degree with the creation process, because one of the reasons that's brought down for creation is the fact that Hashem desired to do kindness. And that, as we said, is the source for the Sarusa de La'ela, the level of the inspiration from above, that is not a result of our avoided down here. And the fact that in Nisan was the thought to create the world, we could say that this thought, that Hashem had the thought of creating the world in Nisan, that is similar to the machshava that we spoke about before. We called it the machshava atzmis, that machshava of Hashem's essence that consulted the Yidden and imagined and saw the Yidden accomplishing what they have to do in Torah mitzvahs to accomplish the job of Dira B'tachtoin. It is the intention and the goal of creation that was not revealed did not come down in a revealed way in the creation, because that's only the intention. An intention of something happens afterward. Yom Shabbos Beis Nissen, but on Shabbos, the second day of Nissen, Nasa Hashlemis, the Mashava becomes the perfection of the thought, because Shabbos, as we know, is the Aliyah and the perfection by Yechulu Hashmayim V'Aretz. That also means from the word completion and perfection, that everything that took place earlier becomes perfected. So the same thing, the Shabbos of the second of Nisan perfects and completes that thought that was yet in a state of imperfection, was now completed and perfected. Then the Rebbe connects it with the special date on the Chassidic calendar. It says that we can connect this. The fact that the second of Nisan is the yard site of the Rebbe Rashab, 1920, Tafresh Pei, the Rebbe Rashab passed away on the second of Nisan. It's the very day when his son, the Rebbe's father-in-law, in other words, the Frierdiker Rebbe, was coronated and crowned, the only child of the one whose yard site is on the second of Nisan, but Kesar and the with the crown of leadership. So it's a double commemorative day. It both commemorates the Yom Hilul of the Rebbe Rashab, and it also marks the ascension to the leadership of Chabad, to the leadership to be a Nasi B'Yisrael of the Frierdiker Rebbe. What's the connection between that and the idea we spoke about before? The purpose and the intention, the goal of the creation is that there should be in the world the revelation of the infinite light of Hashem that's completely beyond the connection of the world. Like we said before, the the third level of the level that's considered a gift from above, that is beyond what we do and what we trigger and what we draw down of a quid pro quo of that engenders this revelation of that Ein Sof that's beyond the world will be is primarily something that comes about through the study and spreading of the inner part of the Torah. The Pnimis HaTorah Mitzad Atzma Hilam Mailam Megilui, because the inner part of the Torah, it's on its own, is beyond a state of revelation. It's not just relative to the revealed part of the Torah, it's concealed. It means it's essentially Sosim De'araisa. It's essentially something that's out of this world. Just like that Isurus D'Leila comes from above, that it's the Ein Sof that's beyond the worlds entirely. The same thing, the inner part of Torah is really something that's out of this world. Through the study of the inner part of the Torah, for understanding and comprehension, top of page Yud Bey, the last page of the Maimer, especially through spreading it outward, until the ultimate state of outward, how much outward we can go. We draw down the light that is beyond any connection with the world, until the essence of the light. That Chassidus explains that when we deal with the light, there are two aspects. There's the Hispashtus Oir, there's the expansion of the light, and there's the essence of the light. So the essence of the light is beyond revelation, and because we're dealing with that essence of the Torah that's essentially beyond revelation, and we take it and we spread it out, and we bring it out to the furthest level of chutzah, to the furthest distant level, that there's no ein chutzah lamata manu. The Rebbe often speaks in Yitz Kislev Abrenges about this idea that afotzes hamayonas chutzah means as outward as you can go, as far outward as you could imagine to go. So then, when we bring the essence that is beyond revelation to the most furthest outward, that should be revealed in the world, so then we draw down that very same level that we said before, that is that is beyond worlds, that level that follows the Isrustul Sata, Isrustul Leila, the third level of Isrustul Leila, that's a Matondamal Mile. And then he says, V'zoya Shaykh is the base Nisan, that is the connection of the second of Nisan. Shabbos Harishon, the Maisa Bereshis, the first Shabbos of the creation, that time, that first Shabbos of creation, the Machshava, that was the first Shabbos of creation, not in actuality, not in the physical world. That took place on the second of Tishrei, the first Shabbos of creation, the actual Shabbos of creation. But the first Shabbos of creation in thought, like we said just before on the previous page, that then was the perfection of Hashem's thought, the completion of Hashem's thought being the Shabbos, the completion, the perfection of the entire week. So that's the connection between Beis Nisan, Lebal Hailula, or Lebnei Yechidei Malo Mekaimei, both to the one whose yahrzeit and to his only son that took and filled his place, took his place over. Hadarushim Shabal Hailula, Shu Rambam, the Torah Chassidus, through the Mamorim of the one whose yahrzeit it is, the Rebbe Rashab, and he is the Rambam of Torah Chassidus. And the Rebbe brings us down the statement that's brought down from Chassidim, that the reason why he's called the Rambam of Chassidus is because he brings clarity and order to the deepest, most concepts, just like the Rambam took from like scattered places, entire Shas, and gave order and clarity and brought things down in a clear and succinct manner, in a manner that could be understood of the entire Shas. Because anyway, opens up a Gemara, we know that things are all over the place, and it's like scattered, and there's this over here and that over there, and sometimes it's not clear because you need to look up a different Gemara that's somewhere else to be able to clarify this Gemara. The Rambam organized everything and made everything in an orderly fashion, in a way that it's clearly delineated an entire topic, an entire concept thoroughly. So the same thing they would say about the Rebbe Rashab that he did with Chassidus. That the Rebbe Rashab is the Rambam of Chassidus. He took themes and topics and concepts of Chassidus and developed them and elaborated upon them and elucidated them, just like the Rambam does with topics in Nigla. Dvarim hamizbarim, the Rebbe explains what that means. He says in the parentheses on line 9, things that become clarified. They stood up until it is arranged and clear by everyone, which is what the Rambam said was his goal in writing the Rambam, to have the halachas of the Torah be in a way that everybody has a clarity in them and knows exactly what they have to do. In other words, the Rambam was really like the first Shulchan Aruch before there was a Shulchan Aruch. The Rambam organized and made the Torah that it should try to be accessible to even those that cannot wrap their minds around the entire Gemara. This is even more so, that the spreading of the well springs, it was by the fact that he was the Rambam of Chassidus, but even more so when he established through his establishment of Yeshiva of Temchet Mimim. Then a totally new stage began in the spreading of the well springs. And then following that, following that through my father-in-law, through the Frierdiker Rebbe. So then the spreading of the well springs becomes even more powerful. This, the spreading of the well springs outward. It's the preparation on the vessel and the vehicle. As the Mashiach told the Baal Shem Tov, to the coming of the Master, this is the King Mashiach, that the Mashiach is going to come through the spreading of the well springs. Then we fulfill the intention and purpose of having a home down here below, because of Mamish, speedily, right away. Any questions? Any questions? And let me see if I could help you guys unmute yourselves. Any questions? Any questions?